Yeah, I think the major point here is that we want to continue to negotiate to try to come up with a solution. That's what this group has been about from the start. I'm disappointed to hear some reports that the leader may go to the floor and use some procedural points to try to end that negotiation, at least for now. But we're not going to give up. We're going to stay in this game. We think it's important. We believe that our current situation is unacceptable. We have the largest number of long-term unemployed Americans ever in our history. The unemployment insurance system is important, but frankly, it's not working to address the concerns that we have right now in our economy. There are jobs going open because the skills aren't there. Many of us in this group have ideas that could help to improve and reform the unemployment insurance system, provide people the skills they need to access some of those great opportunities and jobs. And that's what we ought to be doing as a country. We also believe as a group that we need more pro-growth policies to be able to get this economy moving. But we were willing, as a group, to move forward with a 3-month extension with the understanding this would be a time for us over the next few months to make those reforms, to make those improvements. All I would add to what was said already about our good faith effort here is that the pay-fors that we agreed to were not our first choice. They instead were building off of the majority leader's own proposal. Specifically, as you know, some of us offered an amendment that would not allow for double dipping between unemployment insurance and Social Security disability insurance. Senator Reid didn't like our proposal, but he had one of his own. And so his, rather than saving $5.5 billion, saves $1 billion. We were willing to go along with that. We thought it was a step in the right direction. In essence, says if you get unemployment insurance that your SSDI is decreased dollar for dollar by that amount. So we went with his exact proposal in our pay-for. Now, the other pay-for that we have deals with the sequester, not on the discretionary side, but on the mandatory side, non-military, which is the same thing that he dealt with his proposal. Now, he took it out beyond the 10 years, in other words, extended to 10, 11, 12 years from now, these pay-fors. We instead said, well, let's use these same programs and instead have a very slight decrease in those programs over the next 10 years, keeping within the budget window. It's about a 1.7% decrease, by the way, in these important programs. And we think that's fair, and we think that that's appropriate. And that would have paid for both the UI extension to be able to do the reforms we talked about. But second, it also takes care of this issue that all of us care deeply about, which is not singling out our military and dealing with the Veterans COLA issue that seemed on a bipartisan basis to be something everyone wanted to deal with a few weeks ago when we dealt with the budget. So we're hopeful that today's procedural votes on the floor will not be the end of this process, but rather, unfortunately, just getting us off track temporarily so we can get back to work, determining how do we do the right thing, the responsible thing, for those constituents we represent who are long-term unemployed and are not getting the assistance that they're looking for and they need through the current UI program. Your question was a process question, but really it goes to this fundamental issue. You know, will we be able to come together as Republicans, Democrats, a couple independents who are interested in working with us to solve problems? And look, what we're going to see on the floor today is, in a sense, a charade because, you know, both sides are going to be offering procedural amendments, and then we'll end up with a 60-vote threshold if we get amendments. And, you know, at the end of the day, they're looking to vitiate cloture. They're looking to get rid of all the points of order and so on so that they can just have a Democrat proposal that passes at the end of the day. That's not a negotiation. And so our point is really very simple. I mean, breaking through all this stuff about process and minority rights and so on, let's get together and figure out what makes sense for the American people. And there was an important point made earlier about the House. I don't think we should leave the President out of this either. You know, it was the President who called on us to do a 3-month extension, and he said during that time period he wanted to improve and reform the UI program so it worked better to connect people with the jobs that are out there, give them the skills so they could access these jobs. That's what he told me. That's what he told Susan. That's what he's told other people and said publicly. We've asked the President to help play a role here. I know Susan has talked to him. I have not. I've tried to unsuccessfully. But we need to come together as adults, as we've said on the floor last week, and talk about the problem and talk about potential solutions, understanding that the House is going to have a little different approach. And if we had done that, we wouldn't be shutting off the negotiation now for, you know, whatever process is about to happen on the floor. It essentially shuts off the negotiation for now. We'd be instead saying, okay, maybe we have to stop in order to deal with the omnibus. Maybe there's other things that come up, fine. But let's keep this negotiation going in a serious good faith effort rather than simply rejecting what we have proposed, which we thought was definitely in good faith and consistent with Harry Reid's own proposal, consistent with the President's budget proposal on UI and SSDI, and let's get to yes. And if we're not going to do that, then ultimately we are failing the people we represent. And that's why I think this was an opportunity for us to do something not just important for unemployment insurance, but for this institution and for our country. It's not over. I agree with what was said earlier by all my colleagues. We'll go through this process today on the floor. It'll end up in a very predictable way. And then I hope that we'll be able to get back to work on finding a solution.